Hello everybody, this is Lara from Pure Elliott Wave with your Monday to Friday update for Bitcoin, Ethereum and XRP. I just want to let you know I started a Discord server the other day. I'll drop a link to the invite in the description box below. It's a place where we can share charts and videos, and I set up a voice channel there as well. So because we can't share links and charts here in the YouTube comments, someone suggested I start a Discord server, and I think that might be a good place to continue this community. So hopefully we'll see you there. I'm going to take a look at the bigger picture for Bitcoin, looking at the weekly chart, because when we're having a pullback, it's always a good idea to keep an eye on the bigger picture. Since the low back down here in November 2022, there's very obviously a series of higher highs. There's obviously a series of higher lows. This is the last higher high. And at this time frame, this is the last higher low. So in order for that series to be broken, you really do need to see a new low below 24919.28, but that's a long time away. I would be looking for next support pretty strong, about 35,000. What was support at 41,100, about 41,000, has been broken, so support now turns to resistance. Become proficient in Elliott Wave analysis without reading a textbook in 22 lessons. You know that Elliott Wave analysis can be remarkably accurate when it's done right, but you also know it's complicated to learn. It took me at least 6 months of daily use before I was confident with Elliott Wave. I've created a unique online course to make learning Elliott Wave fun and easy. I've used my 16 years of experience with Elliott Wave, along with my experience as a New Zealand trained teacher, to craft unique exercises for people who are visual and physical learners. This is what our learners have to say about our Learn Pure Elliott Wave online course. This course is on sale for 48 hours only, from 10 a.m. today. The sale ends 10 a.m. Thursday morning. Start learning now. Click on the link below. Volume's fallen off a cliff with crypto compared data. It has declined as well with other data sources, but I think this is a bit sketchy. But in the last complete week, this completed week, which has a higher high and a higher low, does have push from volume, and now price is falling with declining volume. So volume is bullish, pushing price higher, and now declining as price moves lower. ADX at the weekly time frame is now very extreme for this upward trend, but it does tend to reach very extreme early on in a trend, and it can reach much more extreme than this. This is how extreme ADX got in March 2021, which was well before the all-time high in November 2021. So at the end, the trend was waning, but the middle of the third wave can get this extreme, so we're not nearly as extreme as this market can get when it's in a bullish run. RSI is overbought. There's actually some bearish divergence I haven't noted here, but with it being reasonably overbought and exhibiting single bearish divergence, it's unsurprising that we're getting a pullback to relieve these extreme conditions for the short term. But again, RSI can get much more extreme than this, and it can get quite extreme in the middle of the third wave and show some divergence at the end. Again, this is how extreme it got in December 2020, and it wasn't until November 2021, nearly a year later, that price made the all-time high. Money flow is still neutral, and ATR has been showing an increase now along with volume. Volatility is showing an increase to the upside, so that's an indication that this upward movement over the last year is the start of more likely a bullish run rather than a huge rally within a continuing bear market. At the daily time frame, I noticed this flag. We had a breakout, a back test of resistance. We're moving down and away. The target for the flag is 34,530, but I don't expect that target is going to be met. It could be. I just think it's more likely we're going to see the pullback stop about 38,500, about 38,000. There's a bit of a zone in that $500 range there. And if price closes below 38,500, then next support would be 35,000, which is pretty close to the target from the flag. But in the first instance, let's expect support quite likely about 38,500 to about 38,000 in that $500 zone. Yesterday's complete session volume was pushing price lower, so we may see further downward movement. Now, the problem with this is volume will push price in the middle of a bearish movement. It'll also have strong volume with downward movement right at the end of a bearish movement, and it's impossible to tell which of the two situations is unfolding. You've got to put it in context with everything else. ADX is increasing at this time frame, telling us there's a downward trend and there's a very long way to go before it's extreme. RSI is not oversold yet, and there's no divergence. Money flow is not oversold. Volatility is to the upside, and now price is falling, volatility is declining. The volatility and volume suggest a bullish run is underway. Declining volatility with price moving lower, it suggests that this is more likely a counter trend movement. If RSI reaches close to oversold, then that could be where this downward movement ends, particularly if price is at important support, about 38,000. My Elliott Wave count for Ethereum is sitting on the cusp of I might have to change it and see minute wave 2 continuing lower. I've drawn a base channel on this daily chart around minute 2 from the start of 1 to the end of 2 with a parallel copy on the end of 1. The upper edge showed resistance, and I'm going to label this now minuet 1. I've moved it up 1 degree. This downward movement has overshot the lower edge of the base channel. Base channels usually work more often than not in a bull market to show where lower degree corrections find support at the lower edge of the base channel, but they don't always work. Sometimes base channels are breached with deep time-consuming second waves. However, if we see a full red daily candlestick below and not touching this trend line, I'm going to change the Elliott Wave count. The invalidation point moves down here, and I'll see minute wave 2 continuing further as an expanded flat correction, and I'll expect a new low below 2092.33. That's my line in the sand for this wave count, a full red daily candlestick, which would be tomorrow, below and not touching this trend line. If that happens, then Ethereum is most likely going lower. Weekly technicals, I've still got this big ascending triangle on the weekly chart, and I got this from CoinsKid. I'll put another link in the description box to his YouTube channel. He's got some pretty solid technical analysis, and I watch him sometimes because sometimes he picks up things that I miss. Ascending triangles, or classic triangles, can be a little bit hard to identify. We've got this nice resistance line for the triangle. It's not perfect. I mean, you can play with it and put it up along here to here, but then it doesn't work along here. So what I'm going to do is sit it along these two highs, test of resistance, a breakthrough, back test of support, moving up and away, another back test of support. This suggests that after the triangle breakout, after this is a typical back test of support, we might be about to see price move up and away. So this is a rather bullish look for the short term for Ethereum. I want to see a green candlestick bounce up off this trend line on the weekly time frame in order to really have confidence that this back test is successful and it's going to hold. The target from the triangle is 3,347. Along the way up, there's resistance at 2,400. So far, support about 2,200. May actually well hold. At the daily time frame for the short term, there's some bearish divergence between price and RSI as price moved higher, and ADX told us the upward trend was fairly extreme. What was support at 2,400 has given way. I didn't expect that to happen for the short term, but it has, so let's now look for next support at 2,100. If that breaks, I'll look for support at 1,880, but I expect support about 2,000, 2,100 is more likely than not to hold. Volume was pushing price higher, lower a couple of days ago in the last. So far, this session for 23rd of January is incomplete, so we can't draw a conclusion here. But again, with an increase in volume, quite a strong increase in volume yesterday, it could be the middle of a pullback or it could be the end of a pullback. It's impossible to tell either way which of those two scenarios it's telling us. There's a weak bearish signal from on-balance volume that could have been played out now, or we could see a bit more movement, downward movement to follow through from that signal. ADX is now slightly increasing. The negative DX line is above the positive, so there is now a downward trend. RSI is declining below the 50 mark after exhibiting bearish divergence, so could be setting itself up for the next bullish run. Money flow also below the 50 mark. chart, ATR shows us volatility was increasing with upward movement and declining with downward movement. Volume was strongly pushing price higher, and now volume is overall declining as price moves lower. So volume and volatility support a bullish outlook for Ethereum, and that supports the Elliott Wave count. But price doesn't always move in a straight line. There are pullbacks and consolidations along the way, and considering how extreme the upward trend became with RSI overbought and exhibiting multiple bearish divergence, it is unsurprising that we're finally getting a decent pullback to relieve those extreme conditions. Those conditions need to be relieved before it can set up for the next bullish run. And in Elliott Wave terms, we give that structure and we see it as a second wave correction. Today, I'm going to change my Elliott Wave count for XRP for the short term. The big picture remains exactly the same, and again, there are pullbacks and consolidations along the way in a bull market, and it doesn't mean just because here's a pullback or consolidation underway, it doesn't mean that the overall analysis being bullish is wrong. It doesn't mean it's in a new strong bear market. For the short term now for XRP, I'm going to expect the pullback to now most likely continue below 0.456, and in Elliott Wave terms, this is why. We now have a completing, so it's not completed, but unless we see strong upward movement toward the end of this week, we're going to have a full weekly candlestick, a red candlestick below and not touching the lower edge of this base channel. I do the base channel from the start of one to the end of what I had labelled as 2 complete, with a parallel copy on the end of 1. If this base channel is breached in the opposite direction by movement in the opposite direction, it tells us the base channel's not working. It could still be that intermediate 2 is over here, but the probability has reduced. So I'm going to now expect for XRP, this base channel, I need to wait and redraw it when intermediate 2 is complete. I'm going to expect now minus C to move beyond the end of A to avoid a truncation, so a new low at least a little bit below 0.4456, possibly down to 0.4423, the log function of the 0.618 Fibonacci ratio of intermediate wave 1. Or, if it gets a bit lower, a more normal depth for intermediate 2 would be 80 to 90% the length of intermediate 1, so between 0.40954 and 0.34447. It's very, very normal for these markets to have corrections that are 80 to 90% of the wave of the same degree that they're correcting. Absolutely normal behavior. So for intermediate 2 over here, I've said for a long time it was rather brief and shallow, and now I expect, yeah, that's because it wasn't over and it's gonna continue a bit lower. So I've been concerned for XRP for the last week, I think, and I've outlined those concerns in some detail, and now I think those concerns may well be justified. I think XRP is on a deeper pullback than the other two. So at the weekly time frame, the bigger picture for XRP sees an upward trend with a series of higher highs and higher lows. And here is the last higher low. I mean, really, you need to see the last higher low before the higher high to see that pattern broken of higher highs and higher lows. So technically, you would need to see a new low below 0.4120 for that pattern to be broken, and for us to say that XRP has had a change from up to down using that methodology. Look for support at 40 cents. Volume was pushing price higher. As price moved up, volume supported it. And now, as price moves sideways and lower, overall there's some decline in volume. So the volume profile is still bullish. At this time frame, ADX is declining, telling us there's no clear trend. The negative DX line remains below the positive, so there has not been a possible trend change indicated at the weekly time frame. RSI is in neutral. It reached oversold on the weekly time frame back in June 2022, so I'm still very confident that that low for XRP is going to remain intact. My bigger picture for XRP does remain bullish. Money flow is neutral. There's now a lower low below this point back down here, so the pullback is continuing. Look out for support at 0.4875. Below that, as we saw on the weekly time frame, at 40 cents. Volume was pushing price higher. It's been strongest most recently on an upward session, and now overall volume is declining as price falls, but day on day there is a little bit of an increase, but still some decline in price in volume as price falls of its own weight. There's a weak bearish signal here from on-balance volume, so I will expect some more downward movement from XRP. This supports the new Elliott Wave count. ADX is telling us at this time frame there is a downward trend and it's not extreme. RSI is not oversold, but it's not too far off, so there's not actually that much room for the downward trend to continue. Money flow is neutral. That's it from me today with your analysis of these three markets. Analysis of Nano today has won by an absolutely huge margin on the vote that I posted for you yesterday, and then Veracity is coming in second by quite a wide margin. Cardano is lagging behind with very few votes in third place, so I'm probably only going to have time this week to do 2 of that vote, and then I'll run a new vote for you next week. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in that, and don't forget the Discord server.